this week's challenge, we're looking at the reporting tools again. And so our data source has each line is a book and how many weeks it's been on the bestsellers list. But if we take a look at the metadata here, we see that our weeks on list is a string. So the first thing we want to do is make that numerical so that we can actually use it to aggregate our data. So we've been told that there may be multiple authors per book, and there are two ways in which authors are duplicated here. Or sorry, not duplicated, how they're combined together. So either they have an and in between their name, if we just look at this example here, for example. So this function may look a little bit complicated, but it's just, I prefer to have it all in one. You could easily have split these out. So read it from the inside out. First of all, we're dealing with those instances where we have the and in between the two authors, and we're just replacing that with a /. Then we're seeing that, okay, some authors also have just a comma between their names. So for the comma space, we're just replacing that with a /. Then we're thinking, well, we don't want that by space at the start of every author, so we'll get rid of that too. And then finally, we may have some leftover white space, so we just wrap that all in a trim just because it's nice and clean that way. So when we do this, you'll see if we keep a special eye on these two rows here, then we see that they have their / in there now. And you can see we've got rid of the by for everything. So now when we use our text columns and we split to rows on the /, then if you keep an eye on those rows again, then you'll see that we get our duplication there, where we have a row for each author, but the same book. So our first thing that we want to do is we want to know how many weeks each author has spent on that list and how many books they've written. So we group by our author, we sum up that weeks on list, and we count the distinct titles. And we just do a little bit of renaming to make those columns make a bit more sense. Then, because we only want the top 10, then we sort these in a descending order, the weeks on list, and we use the sample tool to just take the first 10 rows. And these are the authors and the number of books they have written. Then we use our interactive charting tool. I might actually build this up with you because I think it's easier than just talking through it. So let's bring in our interactive charting tool, and then let's just add a layer. This is going to be a bar, and it's going to have the author on the x-axis, and it's going to have the total weeks on list on the y-axis. And that sorts it all nicely for us too. Now I could definitely rename this layer if I wasn't going to be lazy, but as you're following along, I'm sure this is fine. So we're going to now make a scatter. We have the author on the x-axis, and then we have the number of books on the y-axis. Now I could have a secondary axis here, but the numbers kind of correlate quite nicely. Like that's not too small for you to be able to see what's going on. So I think in this instance, I would leave them on the same axes as they have done in the challenge, I believe. So then we just have to do a little bit of formatting. Oh, so for example, for the layer, they change the colors to this kind of minty green, I think it is here. And then the other layer is a purple. So we change that as well. Lovely, lovely. Then I'd do some, I wouldn't have any of the titles on. So I'd just kind of delete those because I don't think it's necessary to have an author, and then it might be a bit confusing having anything there because our labels here would kind of tell you what the numbers were describing. And then some of the other things I did for the y-axis, don't use a auto range because it starts at -11. Oh, sorry. Whereas I'd rather that started at 0 so that my labels were a bit closer to my bars. And then, yeah, it's up to you what you want to do. I would hide the grid lines, for example, just because they're chart junk, they're ugly. But again, up to you. I would also show the axis line, to be honest, myself personally. But yeah, that's kind of all the formatty things that you might want to do. You know, you could play forever with that. Then to add a title, use a report text tool, attach it to the existing field and just write top 10 best-selling authors. And that gives us our sort of chart here nicely. And then we kind of want to move on to do that table where we have the top book for each year. So first of all, to know which year it's coming from, we need that date field to be a date field. So we use one of the pre-configured strings to match it up and get us our date time out field here. Then we just take the year from that and sort them in descending order, the year and the weeks on list. Take the first one, very similar to what we just did, so that we now have our 8 rows, one for each year, and our top book for that year. So we just select out the various things. I put the year to being a string again because otherwise you have the comma for the thousands separator, and rather than kind of mess about with formatting the number, I thought just make it a string and that'll make it easier. Then with the basic table tool, literally the only thing that needs to be changed is to change the horizontal alignment to be center on each of the 3 fields, which again, very simple. Use the text tool again to add on that heading, best selling books per year, union those together by position and kind of make sure the specific output is 1, 2, so that you have your chart and then the table below that. Use a layout tool to just make all records combined in a vertical configuration, and then you have your report. So I hope that that was useful for anyone struggling with the challenge, and thanks for watching.